The ship Times, Gentle Harmony Times, drifted through space like a dying whale. Its elegant silver hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere into the void. Inside, Captain Zilani pressed her delicate blue fingers against the emergency communication panel, her large black eyes wide with terror. "This is Captain Zilani of the Catherian research vessel Times Gentle Harmony *." She spoke into the transmitter, her voice trembling. "We have suffered catastrophic engine failure near the Terran border. Our life support systems are failing. Any nearby vessels, please respond. We have 37 crew members aboard, including younglings. Please, someone help us." The message repeated automatically every 10 minutes, broadcasting across all known frequencies. Zilani slumped back in her chair, exhausted. The Kytherians were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful poetry and advanced healing technologies. They had never needed to be warriors. Their world was gentle, with soft breezes and warm rains, where the most dangerous creature was a small herbivore that might nibble your flowers. "Captain," whispered her second officer, Tellin. His usually bright purple skin had turned pale with fear. "The engine core is completely dead. We cannot repair it without a full shipyard." Zilani nodded sadly. They had been returning from a cultural exchange mission with the Andorian Federation when their ancient engine finally gave up. The Times Gentle Harmony Times was over 300 years old, a relic from more peaceful times when ships didn't need to be built for emergencies. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Maybe 6 hours with life support rationing," Tellin replied. "Less if we keep all systems running." Around them, the bridge crew worked quietly, their movements graceful but urgent. The Kytherians were tall and thin, with smooth skin that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, everyone was showing shades of blue and gray, the colors of fear and sadness. "Captain!" The communications officer, Mora, suddenly perked up. "I'm receiving a response to our distress call." Hope bloomed in Zilani's chest like a warm flower. "Put it through." A harsh, crackling voice filled the bridge. The translation software struggled with the aggressive tones and strange accent. Gentle Harmony *. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Times Iron Wolf *. We received your distress signal and are changing course to assist. ETA 47 minutes. Hold tight. We're coming. The crew exchanged glances. Earth? They had heard stories about the Terrans, the newest members of the Galactic Council. Rumors said they came from what other species called a death world, though nobody really believed such places existed. Surely no species could evolve on a truly dangerous planet. "Thank the stars," Zilani breathed. "Any help is welcome. Mora, send our thanks and our exact situation." "Already done, Captain," Mora replied. "They acknowledge and say they're pushing their engines hard to reach us faster." Time crawled by like a wounded creature. The life support systems wheezed and struggled. The temperature began to drop as the heating systems conserved power. Some of the younger crew members huddled together for warmth, their skin showing the pale white of cold fear. Then, through the viewports, they saw it. The human ship appeared like a nightmare given form. Where Catherian vessels were smooth and flowing like works of art, this thing was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. It looked less like a ship and more like a weapon that someone had decided to put living quarters inside. Strange markings covered its dark hull, and what the Kytherians assumed were weapons ports dotted its surface like angry eyes. "That's their ship?" Tellin whispered. "It looks like something designed for war," Mora added, her skin flickering between purple and green with confusion and worry. The human vessel maneuvered with frightening precision, its engines burning with an intense blue-white flame that made the gentle pink glow of Catherian drives look like candlelight. It settled alongside the Times Gentle Harmony Times, with movements that spoke of constant practice and deadly efficiency. Gentle Harmony *. This is Times Iron Wolf *. The voice crackled again. "We're preparing to dock. Warning, our airlocks are not compatible with standard galactic designs. We're going to have to cut through your hull." "Cut through our hull?" Zilani gasped. "But the structural integrity—" "Don't worry, we know what we're doing. We've done this before." "Stand by." The Kytherian crew watched in horror as mechanical arms extended from the human ship. Instead of gentle docking clamps, these arms ended in what could only be described as cutting tools. Sparks flew as they began carving through the Time's gentle harmony asterisk hull like it was soft fruit. "They're destroying our ship," someone cried. "No," Zilani said, though her voice shook. "They're helping, I think. They must know what they're doing." The cutting stopped, and there was a moment of terrible silence. Then, with a grinding sound that made everyone's teeth ache, a section of the hull simply fell away. Emergency force fields flickered into place to maintain atmosphere, but the sight of the jagged hole made everyone's skin flash white with terror. Then the humans came aboard. The first thing that struck the Catherians was the smell. These beings reeked of metal and something sharp and dangerous that made their sensitive noses burn. The second thing was their size. Where Catherians were tall and graceful, these humans were shorter, but impossibly broad and thick, like they were made of compressed muscle and bone. The first human through the breach wore a suit of armor that looked like it could stop projectile weapons. Her helmet retracted to reveal a scarred face with small, predatory eyes, and a mouth full of what could only be described as fangs. When she smiled, it looked like a threat. "Captain Chen, Earth Space Navy," she said, her voice carrying easily through the ship without any amplification. "Sorry about the mess, but your airlock design wouldn't support the weight of our equipment." Behind her came more humans, each one looking like they had been built for violence. They carried tools and equipment that seemed far too large and heavy for any reasonable being to lift, but they handled them like toys. Their movements were quick and efficient, with none of the graceful, flowing motions that civilized species used. "You said you had engine problems?" Captain Chen asked, looking around the bridge with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail, every weakness, every escape route. "Yes," Zilani stammered. "Complete failure. We were told it would require a full shipyard to repair." Captain Chen laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. "Shipyard? Hell, no. Rodriguez, get down to their engine room. Take the plasma welders and the emergency fusion unit." "Copy that, Captain," replied another human, this one even larger than the first. As he headed for the door, Zilani noticed that his arms were covered in what looked like scars from burns and cuts. What kind of life had these beings lived that they wore such injuries like decorations? "Don't worry," Captain Chen said, noticing their stares. "Rodriguez has been fixing engines since he was 12. Lost his first finger to a plasma conduit when he was 14, but he learned from the experience." "Lost a finger? At 14? The Catherians exchanged horrified glances. What kind of monsters were these? "While he's working, let's get you some heat," Chen continued. "Your people look like you're freezing to death. Thermal units are coming through the breach now." More humans entered, carrying devices that they set up around the bridge. Within minutes, blessed warmth began flowing through the air, but the relief was mixed with growing terror as the Catherians got a better look at their rescuers. Every human seemed to bear scars or marks of old injuries. They moved with the casual confidence of predators who had never encountered anything they couldn't kill. Their tools looked like weapons, and their weapons looked like tools designed to unmake the universe itself. "Captain," one of the humans reported, "we've got their life support back online and running at 110% efficiency." 110%? Telline whispered. "That's impossible. The systems aren't designed for that. Impossible is just a word humans use to describe things we haven't figured out how to do yet," Chen replied cheerfully. "We had to bypass some safety protocols, but don't worry about it. The worst that could happen is a complete system overload. And we'd noticed the signs long before that became a problem." Complete system overload? The Catherians were beginning to understand that these humans had a very different relationship with danger than any sane species should. "Captain Chen," came Rodriguez's voice over the communication system, "I've got good news and bad news about their engine." "Give me the bad news first," Chen replied. "The bad news is that their engine core is completely fried. Total molecular breakdown. Can't be repaired." Zilani felt her heart sink. They were still doomed, just doomed while warm instead of cold. "What's the good news?" Chen asked. "The good news is that I can build them a new one. Give me 6 hours, and access to your fabrication bay. And I'll have them running better than they ever have before. Build a new engine core? In 6 hours? The Catharians stared at each other in disbelief. Such a thing would take their best engineers months of careful work. And that was with proper facilities and unlimited resources. You heard the man, Chen said to her crew. Let's get to work. And someone get these people some food. They look half-starved. The humans dispersed with frightening efficiency, and within minutes, the Times' Gentle Harmony Times was swarming with activity. Everywhere Zilani looked, humans were doing impossible things with casual ease. They lifted machinery that should have required gravity lifts with their bare hands. They worked with dangerous energy fields without protective equipment. They jury-rigged solutions that violated every known principle of safe engineering. And somehow, impossibly, everything they touched began working better than it ever had before. But as Zilani watched her ship being repaired by these terrifying beings, a new fear began growing in her heart. These humans weren't just helping them out of kindness. Nobody became this efficient at emergency repairs without a lot of practice, and nobody got this good at cutting through ship hulls without doing it many, many times before. What exactly were these beings? And what did they want in return for their help? As if reading her thoughts, Captain Chen appeared at her side with 2 steaming cups of something that smelled like liquid fire. Coffee, Chen explained. It's a human stimulant. Thought you might need something to keep you alert while we work. Zilani accepted the cup with trembling hands. The liquid was dark as space and seemed to move with its own malevolent energy. Captain Chen, she said carefully, may I ask what you were doing in this region of space? Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Patrol duty. The galaxy's a dangerous place, Captain. Someone needs to keep the shipping lanes safe. Safe from what? Zilani wanted to ask, but she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. Whatever dangers lurked in the darkness between stars, these humans were apparently the solution the Galactic Council had chosen to deal with them. And that thought was more terrifying than their engine failure had ever been. The coffee burned Zilani's throat like liquid flame, but somehow it made her feel more alert. Around her, the humans continued their work with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. She watched one of them, a female with arms like steel cables, manually lift a power relay that should have weighed several tons. The human grunted slightly with effort, but otherwise seemed unbothered. How is she doing that? Tellin whispered, his skin flickering rapid shades of purple and blue with confusion and fear. Before Zilani could answer, Captain Chen appeared beside them again. The woman moved with a silence that was deeply unnerving for someone wearing heavy armor. That's Johnson, Chen said casually. She's from a high-gravity colony world. Earth normal is only about 60% of what she grew up with. So everything here feels light to her. High-gravity colony world? Zilani tried to imagine growing up in gravity stronger than normal. It sounded like torture. How much higher? She asked. Oh, about 2.4 Earth standard, Chen replied. Makes for tough kids. Johnson here once carried a wounded teammate 15 kilometers through a combat zone. Still had enough energy left to fight off the hostiles when she reached safety. Combat zone? Hostiles? These casual mentions of violence made Zilani's skin flash white with terror. What kind of life did these beings live? A new human approached their group, this one different from the others, where the rest wore utilitarian work clothes or armor. This one wore something that might have been a medical uniform. If medical uniforms were typically reinforced with what looked like blast-resistant materials, Captain, the newcomer said in a voice that was surprisingly gentle, I've been checking on the Catharian crew. Several of them are showing signs of severe stress and malnutrition. They've been rationing food and water for longer than they admitted. How long? Chen asked. Based on their biochemistry, I'd say they've been on half rations for at least 3 weeks. Chen's expression darkened. 3 weeks? Why didn't they mention this in their distress call? The medic shrugged. Pride? Maybe? Or they didn't want to seem like they were complaining. Their species seems to avoid conflict, even when it's detrimental to their health. Right, Chen said, turning to Zilani. Dr. Martinez here is going to set up a feeding station for your crew. Don't argue with him about it. His bedside manner is terrible. But he's kept alive people who by all rights should have been dead 3 times over. Dr. Martinez smiled, and like all human smiles, it showed far too many teeth. I'll need to know about any dietary restrictions or allergies. Human food can be intense for species that aren't used to it. Intense? Zilani was beginning to learn that when humans said something was intense, it usually meant potentially lethal to normal beings. Most of our food is very mild, she said carefully. We prefer gentle flavors and soft textures. Dr. Martinez nodded. I'll start you on some of our emergency rations. They're designed to be nutritionally complete but bland. Should be safe for your digestive systems. He walked away, and Zilani noticed that like all the humans, he moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent time in dangerous situations. Even their doctor was clearly some kind of warrior. Captain, came Rodriguez's voice over the communication system. I need someone to hold this stabilizer while I weld the quantum matrix into place. Fair warning. There's going to be some exotic radiation, but nothing that would be dangerous to humans. Nothing dangerous to humans, Tellin repeated faintly. What about us? You'll want to evacuate this section of the ship, Chen said matter-of-factly. Human tolerance for radiation is unusual compared to most species. We'll handle this part ourselves. Unusual radiation tolerance? Zilani felt her mind's reeling. What kind of hellish world had spawned these beings, that they could casually work with radiation that would kill her people? As they evacuated the affected areas, Zilani found herself in the ship's small garden dome with most of her crew. It was a peaceful space, filled with the gentle flowers and soft grasses of their homeworld. The contrast between this serene environment and the armored humans working in their ship was stark. Captain, said Eula, one of their youngest crew members, her skin almost white with terror. What are these beings? They speak of violence like we discuss the weather. They work with energies that should kill them. They lift weights that should crush their bones. Are they some kind of artificial constructs? Before Zilani could answer, Dr. Martinez entered the dome carrying a large container. Behind him came another human pushing a cart loaded with packages. Feeding time, the doctor announced cheerfully. I've brought some of our standard emergency rations. They're not much to look at, but they'll get your strength back up. He began unpacking the containers, and immediately the dome filled with smells that made the Catherians' sensitive noses burn. Whatever this food was, it reeked of spices and chemicals that seemed almost aggressive in their intensity. This one's supposed to be beef stew, Martinez explained, holding up a package. And this is chicken soup. Both are comfort foods on Earth. Very mild by human standards. Mild by human standards. Zilani was beginning to understand that human standards were very different from everyone else's standards. The doctor opened one of the packages, and steam rose from a thick, brown liquid that looked like it might eat through metal. He tasted it himself first, nodding approvingly. Good batch. Not too spicy. He handed the first portion to Zilani, who accepted it with trembling hands. The smell alone was making her eyes water, but she was desperately hungry. She took a small sip. It was like swallowing fire. Her mouth exploded with flavors so intense they seemed to attack her taste buds directly. She gasped, her skin flashing bright red with shock. Too much? Martinez asked, looking concerned. Here, try this instead. Plain broth, no seasoning. He handed her another container. This one was merely overwhelming instead of potentially lethal. Somehow, she managed to keep it down, and immediately felt strength returning to her body. Around her, the other Catherians were having similar experiences. Their usual soft pastels had been replaced by wild flashes of red, orange, and yellow, as their systems tried to cope with food that seemed designed for beings with digestive systems made of steel. But it was working. For the first time in weeks, they felt truly nourished. Your people must have very robust digestive systems, Zilani managed to say. Martinez laughed. You should see what we eat when we're not trying to be gentle. My grandmother's hot sauce would probably dissolve your tongue. Dissolve their tongues? These beings consumed foods that were literally caustic? Dr. Martinez, Eula asked hesitantly, what is your homeworld like? Earth? The human's expression grew thoughtful. Earth's beautiful, he said. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. Of course, it's also trying to kill you pretty much all the time. Trying to kill you? Well, sure. We've got weather that can level cities, predators that see us as food, diseases that can wipe out entire populations, natural disasters that reshape continents, and plants that are toxic just to touch. The gravity's strong enough to break bones if you fall wrong. The atmosphere has just enough oxygen to support combustion, but not so much that everything catches fire all the time, and the radiation from our sun gives you cancer if you're not careful. The Catherians stared at him in horror. He was describing a nightmare world, a place of death and chaos that no sane species would ever choose to live on. And you consider this beautiful? Tellen whispered. Oh, absolutely, Martinez replied. All that stuff that wants to kill you also makes you stronger. Evolution doesn't mess around on Earth. You adapt, or you die. Makes for tough people. But how do you survive? How does anyone survive on such a world? Martinez shrugged. You learn. You get good at not dying. You develop technology to protect yourself, communities to support each other, and knowledge to avoid the worst dangers. And when you can't avoid them, you get good at fighting them, fighting their own planet. The concept was so alien to the Catherians that they could barely comprehend it. Their homeworld was gentle and nurturing. A place where the worst weather was a light rain, and the most dangerous animal would run away if you made loud noises. That's why we're so good at emergency repairs, Martinez continued conversationally. When your world is constantly trying to kill you, you get really good at fixing things quickly under bad conditions. Can't wait for perfect circumstances when there's a volcano going off or a hurricane coming. Volcanoes, hurricanes. Zelani was beginning to understand why the other species in the galaxy spoke of humans in whispered voices. These beings hadn't just evolved intelligence, they'd evolved the ability to survive in conditions that would exterminate any reasonable species. A new voice came over the communication system, speaking in rapid, clipped tones that the translation software marked as urgent. Captain Chen, this is Lieutenant Park in engineering. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Chen's voice replied. The good kind. Rodriguez's new engine core is working too well. It's producing about 300% of the power output of the original design. Too well? How is something working too well a problem? Can you dial it back? Chen asked. Rodriguez says yes, but he wants to know if they want to keep the extra power. Says it would give them faster than light speeds that would make their ship one of the fastest civilian vessels in this sector. The humans were offering to make their ship faster than it had ever been designed to be. Zelani felt a mix of gratitude and terror. These beings didn't just fix things. They improved them beyond recognition. It's up to the Catherians, Chen's voice said. But warn them that with that kind of power output, they're going to need better structural reinforcement and upgraded safety systems. Dr. Martinez looked at Zelani expectantly. What do you think, Captain? Want your ship to be able to outrun pretty much anything in space? Zelani's mind raced. Faster than light speeds were the domain of military vessels and commercial racers. Her gentle research ship had never been designed for such power, but the alternative was refusing the help of beings who had already saved their lives. Is it safe? She asked. Martinez grinned, showing those predator teeth again. Safe by human standards, sure. We'll reinforce your hull with some of our emergency patch material. Stuff's designed to hold together under combat conditions. Combat conditions. Of course, these beings measured safety in terms of warfare. Yes, Zelani said finally. Please, upgrade our systems. Good choice, Martinez said. Trust me, in this galaxy, it's better to be able to run away really fast than to be stuck limping along hoping nothing nasty finds you. Hoping nothing nasty finds you. The casual way he said it suggested that this galaxy was full of things that normal people should run away from. And these humans were apparently what the galaxy had decided to use to deal with those things. As if summoned by her thoughts, Captain Chen appeared in the dome. Her armor had been splashed with something that looked suspiciously like acid. But she seemed completely unbothered. Good news, she announced. We're ahead of schedule. Your ship will be ready to go in about 2 hours. Bad news is that we need to talk about where you're going next. Bad news? Zilani asked. Chen's expression grew serious. Captain, where were you planning to go after you got your ship repaired? Home, Zilani replied. Back to Kathira Prime, to report on our cultural exchange mission. That might not be a good idea right now, Chen said. We've been tracking some unusual activity in this sector. Pirates, slavers, maybe worse. They've been hitting civilian ships, especially ones that look valuable or defenseless. Pirates, slavers, maybe worse. Zilani felt her blood turn to ice. Your ship, even with our upgrades, still looks like a civilian research vessel. Chen continued. That makes you a target. And these aren't the kind of pirates who are interested in just taking your cargo and leaving you alone. What kind are they? Tellane asked, though his skin was already flashing white with dread. Chen's smile was like a knife blade. The kind that make people disappear. The kind that sell sentient beings like livestock. The kind that we're out here to stop. With the dome fell silent except for the gentle sound of artificial wind through the garden plants. The Catherians were beginning to understand that their rescue had pulled them out of one kind of danger and into awareness of much worse ones. What do you recommend? Zilani asked quietly. Come with us, Chen said. We're heading to Starbase Echo. It's a joint military installation. Heavily defended. You can stay there until we've cleared out this pirate nest. Then we'll escort you home. A military installation. Defended against pirates and slavers and things that were maybe worse. Zilani was starting to understand that the galaxy was a much more dangerous place than her peaceful people had ever imagined. And these terrifying humans were the ones standing between civilized beings and that darkness. The Times, gentle harmony Times hummed with new life as its upgraded engines powered up. Zilani could feel the vibrations through the deck plates. A deep thrumming that spoke of barely contained power. It was nothing like the gentle whisper their old engine had made. This was the sound of controlled fury. All systems green, reported Rodriguez over the communication channel. Your new engine core is purring like a kitten. A really big, really dangerous kitten that could probably punch a hole through a small moon. Through a small moon. These humans measured everything in terms of destruction. Thank you, Zilani replied, though her voice shook slightly. We cannot express our gratitude enough. Thank us by staying alive, Captain Chen's voice cut in. We're going to escort you to Starbase Echo, but I want your ship running silent. Passive sensors only, minimal communications. This sector's gotten hot while we've been working. Hot? What do you mean? Zilani asked. Pirate activity. 3 more ships have gone missing in the last 4 hours. Commercial vessels, civilian transports. Someone's gotten bold. The bridge of the Times, gentle harmony Times, fell silent. The Catherians exchanged glances, their skin flickering between gray and blue with fear. Captain Chen, Zilani said carefully. Perhaps we should wait. Find another route home. No good routes right now, Chen replied grimly. The whole sector's compromised. But don't worry, Captain. The Times Iron Wolf Times has handled worse than pirates before. Worse than pirates. Zilani was learning to dread that word worse when humans used it. Stay close, Chen continued. We'll jump to hyperspace in formation. If something goes wrong, don't try to fight. Run for Starbase Echo, and let us handle whatever's out there. The 2 ships jumped to hyperspace together. The Times, gentle harmony Times, slipped through the fold in space with an ease that was shocking to its crew. Their old engine had made hyperspace jumps feel like struggling through thick mud. This new one cut through dimensions like they were made of air. This is incredible, Tellane whispered, staring at the readouts. We're traveling faster than military couriers. How is this possible? Before anyone could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The hyperspace fold around them collapsed like a broken soap bubble, dumping both vessels back into normal space. Emergency exit, came Chen's voice over the communication channel. Someone's using interdiction fields. Battle stations. All hands. Battle stations? The Catherians looked at each other in confusion. Their ship didn't have battle stations. They had research stations, analysis stations, and cultural observation stations. The closest thing they had to weapons were some mining lasers that could barely cut through rock. Through the viewports, they saw the Times Iron Wolf Times transform. Panels slid back to reveal weapons that looked like they belonged on a battleship. Gun turrets emerged from what had seemed like sensor arrays. The ship that had looked dangerous before now looked like death incarnate. Gentle Harmony *, stay behind us, Chen ordered. Do not, under any circumstances, try to help. This is about to get messy. Messy. Another human word that usually meant horrifically violent. Contact, someone shouted over the Times Iron Wolf's Times communication channel. Multiple vessels, bearing 27 Mark IV. Configuration suggests Vrak Raiders. Vrak Raiders. Zelani's blood turned to ice. She had heard stories about the Vrak. They were one of the few species that made other carnivores nervous. Bipedal reptiles from a world of constant warfare. They had evolved to enjoy violence and suffering. They didn't just raid for resources. They raided because they liked hurting people. Count? Chen asked, her voice calm as discussing the weather. 12 ships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers. They're surrounding us. 12 ships. The Catherians were outnumbered 12-1 by some of the most vicious pirates in known space. This was how they were going to die. Zelani realized, not from engine failure, but torn apart by monsters while their rescuers watched helplessly. Then she heard Captain Chen laugh. It wasn't the sound of someone facing death with courage. It was the sound of someone who had just been presented with an enjoyable challenge. 12 rock ships, Chen said over the communication channel. Could be worse. Could be 20. All right, people. Let's show these lizards why you don't mess with Earth's children. Remember, there are civilians watching, so let's make it educational. Educational? These humans were about to fight impossible odds, and they wanted to make it educational? Gentle Harmony *. Chen's voice came through clearly. You might want to record this. Your species should know what we're capable of when we're properly motivated. The first Vrak ship opened fire. Lance of energy that should have vaporized the Times Iron Wolf *. Instead, the human ship simply wasn't where the beam struck. It had moved with impossible speed, dancing between the energy bolts like they were standing still. The Times Iron Wolf's Times return fire was devastating. Weapons that Zelani hadn't even seen opened up, sending streams of destruction that turned the attacking Vrak destroyer into expanding clouds of superheated gas. 1 down, someone reported calmly. 11 to go. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Catherian experience. Their conflicts, when they occurred at all, were polite affairs involving careful negotiations and gentle deterrence. This was pure, unleashed violence on a scale that defied comprehension. The Times Iron Wolf Times moved like a living thing, flowing through space in patterns that seemed to violate physics. When Vrak ships tried to surround it, it would suddenly be somewhere else, leaving nothing but weapon fire and confusion in its wake. How are they doing that? Telene gasped. Watching the human ship appear to teleport from one position to another. Emergency thruster arrays, Dr. Martinez explained. He had remained on the Times Gentle Harmony Times to monitor the Catherian stress levels, and he watched the battle with the casual interest of someone watching a sporting event. Highly advanced reaction control systems. Uses principles derived from our atmospheric fighter aircraft. Atmospheric fighters. Of course, these beings had developed warfare in their planet's atmosphere before moving to space. They had probably been killing each other efficiently for millennia before they ever left their world. Another Vrak ship exploded, then another. The Times Iron Wolf Times was systematically destroying vessels that were individually larger and more heavily armed. But the human ship fought like it was alive, like it was angry, like it wanted to hurt the things that had threatened peaceful civilians. Remaining Vrak ships are attempting to withdraw, came a report. Negative, Chen replied coldly. Pirates who attack civilian vessels don't get to withdraw. Run them down, all of them. The hunt that followed was merciless. The Times, Iron Wolf Times chased down fleeing Vrak ships with relentless precision, destroying them one by one as they tried desperately to escape. There was no mercy. No quarter given. These pirates had made the mistake of threatening innocents, and the humans intended to ensure they never did it again. When the last Vrak ship died in a burst of flame, the battlefield fell silent except for the gentle hum of the Time's gentle harmonies times new engines. All targets eliminated, came the calm report. Threat neutralized. The Time's Iron Wolf Times turned back toward them, and Zelani was struck by how normal it looked now. The weapons had retracted, the armor panels had closed, and once again it appeared to be merely a dangerous-looking patrol vessel. But she had seen what it could do when properly motivated. Gentle harmony *. Chen's voice came through. Sorry about that unplanned excitement. Are your people all right? All right. They had just witnessed 12 heavily armed warships destroyed by a single human vessel, and Chen was asking if they were all right. We're fine, Zelani managed. Captain Chen, that was incredible. How did you do our job? Chen interrupted. Captain, this is what humans do. We find the things that hurt innocent people, and we make them stop, permanently, if necessary. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. Those were Vrak raiders. They've been terrorizing this sector for months. The local authorities couldn't touch them because they kept hitting civilian targets and running away. But they made the mistake of trying it while we were in the neighborhood. You hunt them, Zelani said slowly. You actually hunt pirates. Someone has to, Chen replied simply. The galaxy's full of peaceful species like yourselves. Beautiful people who create art and literature and healing technologies. But there are also species like the Vrak, who see peaceful people as prey. So we hunt the hunters. The truth hit Zelani like a physical blow. These terrifying humans, these beings who scared her people worse than their original emergency, were protectors. They had evolved on a world so dangerous that they had become the most dangerous things in space. And they used that terrifying capability to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Is that why you're out here? She asked. Patrolling our space? Your space, our space, everyone's space, Chen replied. The galaxy's got enough threats in it without sentient species preying on each other. We've made it our business to discourage that kind of behavior. But why? Tellen asked, his skin flickering with confusion. Why do you care what happens to species you've never met? There was a long pause before Chen answered. When she spoke, her voice was softer than they had ever heard it. Because someone should, she said simply. Because there's enough random cruelty in the universe without people adding to it deliberately. Because if you can stop suffering, and you don't, then you're part of the problem. Dr. Martinez smiled, and for the first time, it didn't look predatory. It looked almost gentle. Captain, your people create beauty. You make poetry and art and healing technologies. The galaxy's a better place because you're in it. Our job is to make sure you get to keep doing that without worrying about raiders and slavers and other monsters. But Zelani was beginning to understand that the real monsters were the ones the humans hunted, not the humans themselves. These beings had evolved to be the most dangerous things in space, and they had chosen to use that ability to protect the innocent. We're approaching Starbase Echo, Chen announced. You'll be safe there until we can arrange a proper escort home. And don't worry about the cost of repairs or the escort. The Galactic Council has an arrangement with Earth. We handle security, everyone else handles civilization. As they approached the massive military station, Zelani saw dozens of ships bearing Earth's markings, human vessels of all sizes, from small patrol boats to massive battleships that looked like they could take on entire fleets. All of them crewed by beings who had chosen to stand between the darkness and the light. Captain Chen, Zelani said quietly, we owe you our lives. How can we ever repay you? Keep being who you are. Chen replied, keep making beautiful things. Keep believing that the universe can be a gentle place. That's worth protecting. The Time's gentle harmony times docked at Starbase Echo without incident. As the Kytherian crew prepared to disembark for their temporary stay, they found the station's corridors filled with humans and other species working together. Engineers and scientists, medics and administrators, all of them part of the vast machine that kept the galaxy's peaceful species safe. But it was the humans who stood out. They moved through the station with that same casual confidence, that same easy competence with dangerous things. They were the guardians, the ones who had chosen to become monsters so that others didn't have to. As Zilani walked through the station, she overheard conversations that would have terrified her a day ago. Discussions of weapon modifications, tactical analyses, casualty reports from conflicts she had never heard of. But now she understood what she was hearing. This was the sound of people who had dedicated their lives to keeping the galaxy's gentle species safe. In the station's main observation deck, she found Captain Chen standing alone, looking out at the stars. The human seemed smaller, without her armor. More vulnerable, but there was still that aura of barely contained danger, that sense that she could erupt into violence at a moment's notice if necessary. "Captain," Zilani said softly, approaching carefully. Chen turned and smiled. It was the first time Zilani had seen her smile without showing teeth. "Captain Zilani, how are your people settling in?" "Well, thank you. The station personnel have been very helpful." Zilani paused, then asked the question that had been bothering her. "Captain Chen, are all humans like you?" Chen laughed, but it was a warm sound this time instead of a threatening one. "Like me? God, I hope not. I'm what happens when you take a perfectly normal human and give her 30 years of military training and combat experience. Most of my people are much more reasonable, but they all come from the same world? The same dangerous place you described? Earth? Yes, we all come from Earth. And yes, it made us all a little bit crazy by galactic standards. But that craziness comes in handy when you need someone to stand between civilization and the things that want to hurt it." Zilani looked out at the stars, trying to imagine what other dangers were lurking out there in the darkness. Pirates and raiders were just the ones she knew about. How many other threats were there that required these dangerous guardians? "Captain Chen," she said finally, "I need to apologize." "For what?" "When you first came aboard our ship, we were terrified of you. We thought you might be worse than the emergency that had stranded us." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "You weren't wrong to be scared. We are dangerous. That's the point. The things we hunt are dangerous too, and you can't fight monsters with poetry and good intentions. But you chose to be protectors instead of predators. Someone has to be the monster under the bed," Chen said quietly. "Better it should be someone who chooses to hunt other monsters instead of innocent people." As they stood together looking out at the stars, Zilani felt something she had never expected when she first saw the Times Iron Wolf asterisk. She felt safe. These terrifying humans, with their casual relationship with violence and their frightening competence, were the reason she could go to sleep at night without worrying about raiders, or slavers, or worse things. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for making a galaxy worth protecting," Chen replied. Later, as the Times Gentle Harmony Times prepared for its escorted journey home, Zilani looked back at the human ships surrounding them. They looked just as dangerous as before, just as threatening, but now she understood what she was looking at. They were monsters. But they were her monsters, standing between her people and the darkness. And for the first time since their distress call had been answered, Zilani felt truly, completely safe.